This is a tutorial on how to wind and reinstall a bobbin on a Singer 362 Fashion Mate. First, you open your bobbin case door and pull out your bobbin. Use a fingernail or nothing sharp. You don't want to put anything in there to damage anything, because if you make any gouges, you're going to wind up making snags for your thread, and it'll cause you all sorts of troubles in the future. Okay, you start by threading your bobbin, and your bobbin has, well, this bobbin has 3 holes in it, but the 2 that are closest to the axle are the ones I'm most interested in. You can see that I am going to put the thread from the inside to the outside, and then I'll go ahead and just lay it over the little hole there. And when I install it on the post, I'm actually going to push it on through that little hole, through that hole that has a thread laying over it, so it locks it in. Push it down, and your machine has a clutch, so you loosen that so that it doesn't run your needle while you're winding your bobbin. And then you take your thread, you put it around this little turn here, and you see I have a whole lot of thread here, so I'm just gonna go ahead and take up the slack. Okay. And your bobbin's going to wind in this direction. And to start your bobbin winding, you actually push a switch. There's a little rubber O-ring underneath this plastic case that actually contacts this wheel. And since this clutch is loosened, only the wheel will spin with the motor. None of your needle or anything will spin. So, and when you wind your bobbin, be gentle. Don't be like a racehorse or be in a big hurry, because the quality of the wind on your bobbin will greatly affect how well your machine sews. It's not your machine's fault if you wind the bobbin too tight or too crazily. So just kind of take it easy on the foot pedal when you wind it. And here we go. You can go pretty fast. But not maximum speed. Max is like this. You see it raise the spool up, and that's plenty of thread. You don't have to go all the way to the edge. I'll go ahead and release the bobbin tire from the flywheel. Go ahead and tighten up your mechanism so that your needle's in action again. And we're gonna go ahead and clip the thread. You actually need quite a bit of thread to install your bobbin properly, so it's okay to have a little bit of a tail. Generally, this is something that people are always confused about. Generally, I think you noticed that I didn't actually flip the bobbin over, and that was for a reason. And the reason is most machines, they actually have the bobbin installed the same way that they're installed on the winding pin. So you noticed when I first started out, this thread in the center ran through. I'm going to go ahead and clip that off, but don't actually invert the bobbin. But this particular bobbin unwinds counterclockwise. And all you do is you pop it in the machine there. And then the machine actually has, or the bobbin case itself actually has a couple grooves. The first groove is right here, and that's the one that we're going to want to feed the thread into. And the second groove is right here. That's the one that's going to snap into, and that's where it will unwind from. So I'm going to start that by actually holding the bobbin so it doesn't spin when I pull on the thread. And I don't know if you can see, but it actually did go in that first register. And continue holding the bobbin so it doesn't spin. And you'll hear a little bit of a click, and you'll be able to tell that it actually is locked in there. And that bobbin is installed. And I'm going to go ahead and thread the machine now. You start by putting it in this first guide. And then the second guide is right here. And before you put it through your tension discs, you're going to want to make sure your pressure foot is actually in the up position. Because if it isn't, your tension discs will have tension on them and your thread will not go in between them. I'm going to go ahead and close this bobbin case door. What you actually do is you just leave the little tail, but you don't pinch it. You just leave the little tail sticking out there, and that's fine. And back to threading the top of the machine, we're going to go through this tension disc assembly. There's a little spring right here. You pull that, push that up, and a little hook. If you can see that. The hook is right here. And you're going to want to make sure that your take-up arm is in its highest position before you proceed. Go through the take-up arm hole, bring it down. In the first guide on the bottom, it actually slips between this piece of plastic and the metal. The second guide, let me get you down here. There's a little curly cue right here. And you start out by putting the tail to the right and the loop to the left, and it should fit right through that curly cue. And then I have a little gap right here in the needle bar, and it slides just like that. And this machine threads from the front to the back and the center. What I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to clip the thread to make it a little bit easier to get through the eye of the needle. I'm going to clip it at an angle on top of that. If your machine is threaded well, typically the thread will pull pretty easily through there, especially when the needle bar or the presser foot is up. Make sure that your needle bar is as high as it can go to assist yourself in threading the eye of the needle. And we're through. And this machine will stitch now. going to go ahead and go into straight stitch because I've gone around this dish towel twice with the zigzag, and I'll finish up with the straight stitch. And when I'm doing that, I'm going to try to put the straight stitch right in between the zigzag to tie it in even better. Like I was saying earlier, if you err on stitching, you're going to want to err on the inside of the fabric versus the outside so that it actually does help lock the fibers versus just having your stitching just hanging on the outside of it. And when you finish, go ahead and go backwards, back stitch. Most machines have a back stitch button or a back stitch lever. You just push it in, run a couple stitches back, let it release it, and then that is a completed stitch. And as per manuals, cut it as close to the goods as you can. And this is a completed overlocked dishcloth. It's a great little repurposed bath towel that was very distressed and very beat up, but wonderfully absorbent little dishcloth.